live. Okay. And then I'll send out a note that we are live. Oops. Amazing. And we will check to see if we are live. And then I'll send out a note. Okay. All right, we are live. Let's go back to okay. Okay. All right. So let's turn down the sound level when we chant. All right. So we're gonna have chant Shri Radhika Stava. Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Gokula Tarune Mandala Mahite Gokula Tarune Mandala Mahite Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Damodharate Vardhana Veshe Patilas Kutabrinda Vipineshe Damodharate Vardhana Veshe Patilas Kutabrinda Vipineshe Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Shabandandi Navashashileke Landita Saki Kuna Ramita Vishake Shamanujane Navashashileke Landita Saki Kuna Ramita Vishake Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Guru Mae Karuna Bharate Sanaka Sanatana Vanita Charite Guru Mae Karuna Bharate Sanaka Sanatana Vanita Charite Radhe Jaya Madhava Jai Jai. Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jai Jai. Taruni Mandala Jai. Taruni Mandala Jai. Rod Hey Jaya Jaya Madhava Jai Jai. Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jai Jai. Ajibo, Ajibo, Haribo, Haribo, Nichako, Ajibo, Haribo, Haribo, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Shri Radhe Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravidikacharya also Teta Satashi Shimad His Divine Grace Savaya Chalananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shitvaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopi Gopinath Shyam Kund Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavanam Ki Jai. Maturanam Ki Jai. Jagannath Swami Ki Jai. Yamunamai Ki Jai. Srimati Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Go Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschachat Asia Tarni. So, good to see everybody. So, Om Ganat Timidanda Shah Gananjana Shalakya Chakshur Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So we're going to continue with our reading of the Sri Caitanya Caritamrta. And we are reading from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instructions to Srila Rupa Goswami in Prayag, Allahabad. And we just finished reading yesterday about the different rasas, the 5 principal rasas. That's the Shantaras, Dashras, Sakyaras, Vatsalyaras, and Madhurya Ras. The 5 main rasas. And we're going to hear about the indirect rasas today. The 7 indirect rasas. Anyway, I don't want to give it away, so we'll go on to the Caitanya Caritamrta. And these are Lord Chaitanya's direct instructions to the Srila Rupa Goswami. And based on these direct instructions to Srila Rupa Goswami wrote the Nectar Devotion and the Ujjvala Nilamani, which is the postgraduate study of the Nectar Devotion. So let's go on. So Om Gana Timidanda Shah Gananjana Shalakya Chakshur Unmeditam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my divine spiritual master, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with a torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorancia. Okay, so now we'll go on to the Caitanya Caritamrta. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhaktivinoda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhaktivinoda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. So we'll start reading and text 186 of the Caitanya Caritamrta, chapter 19 of the Madhya Lila. And these are the indirect rasas that are being mentioned here. Hasyol bhutastata vira Koranodo draichapi Payanaka vibatsa Itigo nascha saptada. The saptada means 7. Besides the 5 direct mellows, there are 7 indirect mellows. Mellows means not exactly relationship, but the taste of a relationship. Known as laughter, wonder, chivalry, compassion, anger, disaster, and fear. Laughter, of course, means humor. Wonder means like shock. Chivalry means being chivalrous, like Sir Walter Raleigh. Compassion means really feeling others' pain to be important and reflecting that. Anger, of course, I think you all know what anger means. Disaster means things really fall apart. And fear means I'm afraid. So sometimes disaster is referred to as something else other than disaster. It's referred to as something that's, let's see, find the right word for that. Something that's disgusting or something that's shocking. Not only shocking, because shocking is already part of wonder. Some like heads floating in a river. Ghastliness is the word usually used for that. This verse is found in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 25116. Hasyad bhuta vira karuna roja vivatsa bhaya pancha vidapakte gona sapta rasahaya. In addition to the 5 direct mellows, there are 7 indirect mellows known as laughter, wonder, chivalry, compassion, anger, disaster, and fear. Hashad, Bhuta, Vira, Karuna, Rodra, Bhaya, and Bibhatsa. The 7 indirect mellows are explained in the 4th part of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and here Prabhupada's going to explain it. Hasya Bhakti Rasa, laughing devotion, is explained as follows. This is my favorite. Vajjamanayar vibhavadhyaye Pushtim hasaratir gata Hasya bhakti uraso nama Budhar esha nigadyate. When through devotional service a laughing attachment to Krishna is developed, it is called Hasya bhakti rasa by learned scholars. Similarly, adbhuta shak rasa is described in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Atmo chitare vibhavadhyaye Svadyatvam bhakti chetasi Savismaya ratir nithadbhuta bhakti raso bhavet. When one's general attachment is mixed in wonder, it is called adbhuta bhakti rasa. So, of course, we have this in the prayer to Lord Nishingadev, adbhuta shringam. this wonderful form of Lord Nrsingadev. It's the same word, Adbhuta. And then Vira. Vira is heroic, actually. And that's actually what my name is based on. Although my name is the Bengalicized version of Vira. Vira Bhakti Rasa is described as follows in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 431. Saivotsaha Ratirastai Vivavadhyar Nijolchitaha Aniyamana Swadyatvam Virabhakti Raso Bhavet Yudadana Deha Dharmaish Chaturda Vira Uchate. When attachment to Krishna mixes with the bellicose tendency, the charitable tendency or the merciful tendency in the heart of a devotee, such devotion is called Vira Bhakti Ras. So in this particular case, it means like chivalry. Okay. Charitable, merciful, and bellicose. Bellicose means heroic, of course. Karuna Bhakti Rasa is described as follows. Karuna means merciful. And it's from 441 in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Atmo chitar vibhavadyar nitha pushtim satam riti bhavetshokkaratir bhakti araso hi karunadibaha. When one's devotional attitude and attachment for Krishna is mixed with lamentation, it is called Karuna Bhakti Rasa. It actually means mercifulness. Similarly, Rodra Bhakti Rasa is described because you're lamenting over someone else's particular situation. Similarly, Rodra Bhakti Rasa is described as follows, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 451, and this, of course, is anger. Nita krodo ratir pushtim avibhavadyar niyochitahai Riti Bhakta Janasya Sao Rodra Bhakti Raso Bhavet. When devotion is mixed with anger in the heart of the devotee, that taste is called Rodra Bhakti Rasa. And so, an example of that would be, of course, when Radharani gets angry with Krishna. Or, that's when Krishna is the object of the anger. And then also you have Krishna getting angry, sometimes with grandfather Bhishma, and sometimes you have Arjuna getting angry at the opposite side in the Battle of Kurukshetra. So Bhayanaka Bhakti Rasa is described as follows, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 461. Vakshyamanaira vibhavadhyai pushtim bhayaratir gata Bhayanaka vido Bhakti Raso Dhirar Udiryate. When devotion is mixed with fear, it is called Bhayanaka Bhakti Rasa. So, like, for example, when the coward boys saw the forest fire, there was some fear. And Krishna told them to close their eyes, and he saved them. Vibhatsa Bhakti Rasa is described as follows, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 471. Pushtim nija vibhavadyar jukupsha ratiragata aso bhakti raso dhirar vibhatsakya tiryate. When one's attachment for Krishna develops in an abominable way, and that devotee enjoys, that is called Vibhatsa Bhakti Rasa. I'll give you an example. It's not that one considers Krishna to be abominable, but let's say one is thinking of his past in the material world. Oh, like Sripad Jamunacharya would say, since I've been tasting newer and newer ecstasy in Krishna consciousness, whenever I think of mundane sex life, I simply want to spit. That's called Vibhatsa Bhakti Rasa. In conclusion, when a pure devotee is situated in any of the five principal mellows, Shantadasha, Sakyavatsaya, or Madhurya, and that mellow is mixed with one or more of the seven indirect Bhakti Rasas, Hasha, Adbhuta, Vira, Karuna, Garodra, Bhayanaka, or Vibhatsa, the indirect mellow becomes prominent. And those are some of the examples I just cited. And so, one of the ways I explain this to devotees is that when you're eating food, you have a particular main ingredient. Okay. Let's give the main ingredient. Broccoli. For those of you in Fiji, you don't know what broccoli is. But anyway, so let's take broccoli. It has some taste. But to enjoy the broccoli completely, you need to add some spices. And you may put some chili peppers. You may put garam masala. You may put turmeric. So many different spices so it becomes tasty. And of course a little salt too. So the spices that spice up or make the main rasa, one of the 5 main rasas, more tasty or more enjoyable are the 7 indirect rasas that we just described, or that Srila Prabhupada and Rupa Goswami and Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu just described. Pancharasa stai vyapi rahi bhakta mane saptagona agantuka pai karane. The 5 direct transcendental mellows of devotional service are permanently situated, that's called Stai Baba, in the heart of a devotee, whereas the 7 indirect emotions appear suddenly under certain conditions and appear more powerful. I mean, like if you have a relationship, let's say you're a friend with someone, and all of a sudden you start laughing. So the laughter sort of overpowers that friendship relationship. It doesn't destroy the friendship relationship, but for some time, the friendship relationship is not as prominent as the laughter, especially if you have a good laugh and you're rolling on the ground and everything like that. Shanta Bhakta Navayogendra Sanakari Hara Dasya Bhava Bhakta Sarvatra Sevaka Apara. So here's some examples of different rasas. Examples of Shanta Bhaktas are the 9 Yogendras and the 4 Kumaras. Examples of devotees in Dasya Bhakti are innumerable. Such devotees exist everywhere. So there's so many servants of Krishna. The 9 Yogendras, they're the sons of Lord Rishabhadeva actually, are Kavi, Havi, Antariksha, Prabhuda, Vipalayana, Avirhotra, Dravida, Turmela, Chamasa, and Karavajana. The 4 Kumaras are Sanaka, Sanandana, Sanatana, and Sanat Kumar. The servant devotees in Gokul, there are many more, of course. There are Rataka, Chitraka, Patraka, and so on. In Dwarka, there are servants like the Ruka, and in the Lord's pastimes in the material world, there are servants like Hanuman. Hanuman ki jai. Fantastico. Sakya Bhakta Srimadi Pure Bimarjuna Vatsalya Bhakta Mata Pita Yata Guru Jana. In Vrindavan, examples of devotees in fraternity are Sridham, that means friendship, and Sudam. In Dwarka, the Lord's friends are Bhima and Arjuna. In Vrindavan, the devotees in parental love are Mata Yashoda and Father Nanda Maharaja. And in Dwarka, the Lord's parents are Vasudeva and Devaki. There are also other superior persons who are devotees in parental love. Of course, only Mother Yashoda, Nanda Maharaja, Devaki, and Vasudeva are actually parents, but others have that same mood or assist Devaki and Vasudeva or Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda Mai, like that. Madhura Rase Bhakta Mukhya Vraje Gopi Gana Mahishi Gana Lakshmi Gana Asankya Gana. The chief devotees in conjugal love are the gopis in Vrindavan, the queens in Dwarka, and the goddesses of fortune in Vaikuntha. These devotees are innumerable. Puna Krishna Rati Haya Aluita Pakara Aishvarya Gyanamishra Kevala Bela Hara. Attachment for Krishna is divided into 2 categories. One is attachment with awe and reverence, and the other is pure attachment without reverence. Of course, in Vrindavan, generally you find this pure attachment without reverence because they forget that Krishna is God. Whereas in Vaikuntha, they are remembering that Krishna is God. Gokale Kevalavati Ashvarya Ganahina Puridvaye Vaikuntadye Aishvarya Pravina. This is exactly what I just said. Pure attachment without reverence is found in Gokula Vrindavan. Attachment in which awe and reverence are prominent is found in the two cities, Mathura and Dwaraka, and in Vaikuntha. Turn the sound a little bit. Okay. Aishvarya Jnana Pradanye Sankuchita Priti Tekya Namana Aishvarya Kevalara Riti. When opulence is very prominent, love of Godhead is somewhat crippled. According to Kevala devotion, however, even though the devotee sees the unlimited potency of Krishna, he considers himself equal to him. Let me explain that. So when there's a lot of opulence, Krishna displays his position as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the all-powerful Personality of Godhead. It sort of interferes with pure love. According to unalloyed devotion, that's Kevala, so even if a devotee sees that Krishna is the unlimited Supreme Personality of Godhead, he forgets that and he says, I'm just equal to him. Like when Krishna was lifting Govardhan Hill, the coward boys were saying, let us help you a little bit, let us lift this so you can take a little rest, a little breather. Shantadasya rasaya ishvarya kahanuti pana vatsaya sakya madure tare sankochana. On the transcendental platform of neutrality and service, sometimes the opulence of the Lord is a prominent stimulus, but the transcendental mellows of paternal, and conjugal love are minimized by that opulence. So now we're talking about something called a vibhav. Vibhav means a stimulus for love. So for those in Shanta Ras generally and Servitude Dasha Ras, when you see how great Krishna is, it stimulates you to love him. But when you're actually in more advanced platform, it's not so prominent. It's not so prominent if you really want to enjoy fraternal, paternal, and conjugal love. You can't think of Krishna as the greatest, as God, as all-powerful, and all those other things like that. I'll give you an example. Okay, in my own life. How about this? That sometimes when I'm doing my science and looking at different objects in this world, not to enjoy them, don't worry, but just to analyze them, looking at the cell, for example, and just trying to understand what's going on in each and every cell of the human body, I become overwhelmed with the feeling of how great Krishna is. And so that sort of like cools down any sort of intimate relationship I may have with Krishna. So I have to forget that to have an intimate relationship with Krishna. Anyway, that's a practical example. Vasudeva Devakira Krishna Charana Vandila Aishvarya Jnane Dunhara Mane Boyahila. When Krishna offered prayers at the lotus feet of his mother and father Vasudeva and Devaki, they both felt awe, reverence, and fear due to knowledge of his opulences. So you have to forget about knowledge of Krishna's opulences. Don't read the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Universal form. That'll really... I'm joking. You should read those things. But don't let it diminish your intimate relationship with Krishna. Devaki Vasudevascha Vijaya Jagadishvarao Krita Sambandhanao Prutrao Sashvajayatina Sangitao. Now the reason... Okay, I just have to clarify what I said before. We should read the 10th chapters of the Gita because, for several different reasons. One reason is we should be humble enough to think that we're not on the highest platform in devotional service. You just concentrate on the most intimate things, and I'm not interested in the 10th. What to speak of the 2nd chapter? It just talks about the eternality, the soul, and and then karma yoga, transcendental knowledge, 4th chapter. then karma yoga. Ooh, I'm just interested in the rasa. That is not a good idea. That means you are very proud. Now, on the other hand, another reason for reading the 10th chapter, 11th chapter, and the rest of the Bhagavad Gita is to preach. Because compassion is so important, and if a Vaishnava doesn't understand the Bhagavad Gita, how are they going to be able to reach others? All right, just wanted to clarify that. Didn't want to give anyone the impression you're not supposed to read the 10th, 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. When Devaki and Vasudeva understood that their two sons, Krishna and Balaram, who had paid obeisance to them, were the Supreme Personality of God, they became fearful and did not embrace them. Whew. That's what would happen if you thought, my kid is God. Ooh. It would destroy the paternal affection. This verse, quoted from the Srimad Bhagavatam 10:44-51, describes what happens just after the killing of Kamsa by Krishna and Balaram. Now, it's a similar thing actually happened when Yashodamai looked in Krishna's mouth, and Krishna was accused of eating dirt, and she saw all the universes and actually saw herself in Krishna's mouth, and she became overcome by a mood of awe and reverence, and Krishna just wiped out that mood of awe and reverence and pulled his Yogamaya curtain over her. So again, he and she could enjoy the parental relationship. Vasudeva and Devaki saw their son kill the powerful demon Kamsa, and after this they were immediately released from their shackles. Balaram and Krishna then offered their respects to Devaki and Vasudeva. Both the father and the mother wanted to embrace their sons, but they were understood that Krishna and Balaram were the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they therefore hesitated to embrace them. Their parental love for Krishna and Balaram was therefore hampered and decreased by awe and reverence. Now, as I said before, don't take that as an example for yourself, that I don't want my love for Krishna to be hampered by knowledge of his opulence. Don't think like that. That's a bunch of hogwash for you to think like that. Unless you're on the level of Vasudeva and Devaki, or Yashodamaya and Marsha. I don't think. Well, I don't think that most of you who are listening to this class are on that level. You certainly wouldn't be listening to my class if you were on that level. Maybe you would be. Maybe you would be listening to my class so that you can find fault in me. So anyway, Krishnara Vishvarupa, Deki Arjunera Hela Baya, Sakya Babe Dashtra Kshamapaya Kariya Vinaya. When Krishna manifested his universal form, Arjuna became reverent and fearful, and he begged forgiveness for his past impudence toward Krishna as a friend. In other words, it really interfered with his relationship with Krishna as a friend. Saketi matva prasavam yaduktam hey Krishna hey Yadava hey Saketi ajanata mahimanam tavedam maya pramadat pranayena vapi yachavahar shartam sakritosi Bihara Shayasana Bhojaneshu Ekal Tapat Vapyachuta Tatsamaksham Taksham Mayai Twam Aham Aprameham. This, of course, is from the Bhagavad Gita. Thinking of you as my friend, I have rashly addressed you, O Krishna, O Yadava, O my friend, not knowing your glories. Please forgive whatever I may have done in madness or in love. I have dishonored you many times, jesting as we relaxed, lay on the same bed, or sat or ate together, sometimes alone and sometimes in front of many friends. O infallible one, please excuse me for all these offenses. It's a quotation from the Bhagavad Gita, as I said before, 11:41-42, the universal form. In this verse, Arjuna is addressing Krishna, who is exhibiting his universal form on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. That's enough to really curb down any sort of intimate relationship you have with anybody. Ooh. I mean, it's just like, okay, let's take a mundane example. Just like if you were friends, intimate friends with Elon Musk, and then he took you to his factory and all the workers were bowing down to him and all the machines were bowing down to him, then you would just, how could you exhibit your friendship? So what to speak when you're with Krishna, if this happens, then woo, how can you exhibit your friendship or whatever other relationship, intimate relationship you have with Krishna? Krishna yadi rukmini re kaila pariyasa Krishna chari bena jani rukmini rahaila trasa. Although Krishna was joking with Queen Rukmini, she was thinking he was going to give up her company, and she was therefore shocked. Actually, Krishna wanted to get Rukmini angry, and he said to Rukmini, "You married the wrong guy. You should have married that nice guy, Sisupal. You're still young. You can get a divorce. Why don't you get remarried?" And Krishna was just trying to get her angry, and she just fainted. She was shocked. Tasya suduka bayasyoka vinasta buder hashtach chlad valayato vyajanam papata dehascha viklava diya sahasaiva muyan rampeva vata vihata pravikiryachkeshan. While Krishna was joking with Rukmini and Dwarka, she was full of distress, fear, and lamentation. She had also lost her intelligence. She dropped her hand bangles and the fan. She was using the fan to lower her hair, became disarrayed, and she fainted and fell suddenly, appearing like a banana tree, knocked down by high winds. Krishna was trying to make her angry, and she didn't get angry. She just, boom, was going to fall to the ground. And Krishna, in order to catch her, had to manifest 2 extra arms. This verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:60-24 refers to Krishna speaking to Rukmini in his bedroom. Just to test her sincerity, he began to joke with her, presenting himself as poor, incapable, unfit to be her lover. Not understanding that he was joking, Rukmini took him seriously and thought that he wanted to leave her company, wanted a divorce. This misunderstanding made her very unhappy, and her whole body was affected. Her fan and bangles fell to the ground, to the floor, and she also fell down like a banana tree, knocked down by high winds. Poor Rukmini. Kevala Rashura Prema Aishvarya Najane Aishvarya Deki Leo Nija Sambandha Se Mane. In the stage of Kevala, unalloyed devotion, a devotee does not consider the unlimited opulence of Krishna, even though he experiences it. He takes seriously only his only relationship with Krishna. So when a devotee reaches the stage of pure unalloyed devotion, especially in friendship with Krishna, he forgets the Lord's opulences, although he sees them, and he considers himself equal to Krishna. There is no question of actually comparing oneself to Krishna, but because the devotee is so advanced in Krishna consciousness, he is able to behave with Krishna as he would with an ordinary man. So in other words, he sees the opulences. Yes, whether he's God or whatever, but he's my buddy. So he's able to reconcile both these opposing types of understanding, which is really interesting. That's how pure his love is. He sees beyond the position. He sees his beloved. Traya chapanishad bhishcha shankya yogasya satvatahai upagiyamana mahatmyam harim samanyatatmacham. When Mother Yashoda saw all the universes within Krishna's mouth, she was astonished. This is the example I gave before. She was astonished for the time being. The Lord is worshipped like Indra and other demigods by the followers of the 3 Vedas who offer him sacrifices. He is worshipped as impersonal Brahman by saintly persons who understand his greatness through studying the Upanishads, as the Purusha by great philosophers, as the all-parading Supersoul by great yogis, and as the Supreme Personality of Godhead by devotees. Nevertheless, Mother Yashoda considered the Lord her own son. This verse is quoted from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:8-45. Those who are spiritually advanced forget Krishna's opulence by the mercy of Yogamaya. For instance, Mother Yashoda considered Krishna an ordinary child. In other words, she was worried about his safety. Wow. That's the reason she tied him up to the grinding mortar. Not because she was so angry with him, because she was worried about what the kid would do. Therefore, his own safety, She tied him up. It's like when I was young, my mother tied me up. Actually, she put a leash on me. A running line. I had a running line in my backyard. I could just run within certain limitations. Because she was worried, out of love. Because my mother felt that she was responsible for my safety, and she was. And so Yashoda Mai was feeling that she was responsible for Krishna's safety. And actually, she wasn't. Because Krishna could take care of himself, but that was his Yogamaya. Tam matvat majam avyaktam marchalingam adhoksajam gopikolu kale damna babanda prakritang yata. Although Krishna is beyond sense perception and is unmanifest in human beings, he takes up the guise of a human being with a material body. Thus, in other words, he doesn't have a material body, let me make that clear, but he makes believe a guise. He takes up the guise, disguise. Just like on Halloween, someone may dress up as Frankenstein, but they still have their regular body. So Krishna puts on the guise of a human being with a material body. He never has a material body. He's Yopi son of Yatma. Bhutanam Ishwaropi Shan Prakati Mishram Madhistaya Sambhavami Atmamaya. Comes down in his original spiritual body. And she bound, thus Mother Yashoda thought him to be her son, and she bound Lord Krishna with a rope to a wooden mortar as if he were an ordinary child. Interesting, wooden mortar. This verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 10.9.14 is in reference to Lord Krishna's exhibiting himself like an ordinary child before Mother Yashoda. He was playing like a naughty boy, stealing butter and breaking butter pots. Mother Yashoda became disturbed and wanted to bind the Lord to a mortar used for pounding spices. In other words, she considered the Supreme Personality of Godhead an ordinary child. Utvaha Krishna Bhagavan Sridamanam Parajitaha Rishabham Bhadrasenastu Pralambo Rohini Sutam. When Krishna was defeated by Sridama, he had to carry him on his shoulders. Similarly, Bhadrasena carried Vrishabha, and Pralamba carried Balaram, the son of Rohini. This verse, such a wonderful pastimes that are being recited here. This verse is from Srimad Bhagavatam 10.18.24. When all the coward boys were playing in the forest of Vrindavan, the demon Palambasura appeared in order to kidnap Krishna and Balaram. The Asura appeared disguised in the form of a coward boy, but Krishna could understand his trick. Krishna therefore divided all the coward boys into two parties. One party belonged to Balaram, the other party belonged to Krishna himself. Ultimately, Krishna was defeated in this play, and according to the wager, the defeated party, because Palambasura was on Krishna's party, had to carry the victorious party on their shoulders. Krishna had to carry Sridham on his shoulders, and Bhadrasena had to carry Vrishabha. The demon Palambasura had to carry Balaram. And when Balaram mounted his shoulders, the demon ran far away. Finally, the demon began to expand his body to a gigantic size, and Balaram understood that he intended to kill him. Balaram immediately struck the demon's head with his strong fist, and the demon fell down dead, as if he were a snake whose head had been smashed. And Balaram, as he was being carried away, he said, "My, how this carrier has changed." Boom! It's Balaram. Strength and enjoyment. Sacha mene taratmanam nurishtam sabrayoshnitam hitva gopi kama kamayana manasho bhajate priya tato gatva vanodesham dripta keshavama bravet na pariheham chalitum nayamam yatrate manaha evam mukta priyam aha skandam aruyatam ite tataschantar date Krishna savadhur anvatapyata. Long verse, actually several verses. My dear Krishna, you're worshipping me and giving up the company of all the other gopis who want to enjoy themselves with you. Thinking like this, Srimati Radharani considered herself Krishna's most beloved gopi. She became proud and had left the rasa dance with Krishna. In the deep forest, she said, "My dear Krishna, I cannot walk anymore. You can take me wherever you like. When Srimati Radharani petitioned Krishna in this way, Krishna said, just get up on my shoulders. As soon as Srimati Radharani began to do so, he disappeared. Srimati Radharani then began to grieve over her request and Krishna's disappearance. These 3 verses are quoted from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:30, 36 to 38. Now we should understand that Radharani has no material pride. She was exhibiting this pride to serve Krishna in his pastimes. And one can learn also from this particular pastime of Radha and Krishna that if one becomes proud of their position, whatever one's position is, then Krishna leaves one bereft. One should always be Trinadapi Sunichena Torari Vashishnana Manidam Manadena Kirtiniya Sadahari. Always be humble. But with Radharani, she's always humble, considering herself a servant of Krishna. And sometimes, to give Krishna pleasure, she acts in certain ways that make it appear that she's not humble. But actually, that's to give Krishna pleasure and to teach Krishna's devotees something. Pati Sutan Vaya Bharatri Bandhavan Ativa Langyete Yitain Yachuta Gataha Gativadas Tavod Gita Mohita Kitava Yoshita Kaschajan Nishi. My dear Krishna, we gopis have neglected the order of our husbands, sons, family, brothers, and friends, and have left their company, just to come to you. You know everything about our desires. We have come only because we are attracted by the supreme music of your flute. But you are a great cheater, for who else would give up the company of young girls like us in the dead of night? So this verse, quoted from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:31-16, describes how the gopis went to the forest for Krishna's enjoyment in the dead of night. The gopis approached Krishna to enjoy themselves with him in the rasa dance, not rasa dance. Krishna knew this very well, but he was superficially trying to avoid them. He is therefore addressed by the gopis as Kitava, a great cheater, because he first attracted them to come dance with him by playing his flute, and yet when they actually came, neglecting the orders of their friends and relatives, he tried to avoid them by giving them so-called good instructions. Stay with your husbands, go back. These cunning instructions were too much for the gopis to tolerate. They therefore had a right to address Krishna as Kitava, a great cheater. They were all young girls, and they had come to him to be enjoyed. How could he avoid them? The gopis therefore expressed great disappointment in this verse. They came voluntarily, but Krishna was so cunning that he wanted to avoid their company. The gopis' lamentation was certainly very appropriate. In this way, Krishna tested their sincerity. Krishna asked them, what are you doing here? There's the tigers and lions here. Just go back home. And they got really upset with Krishna, but it's part of the exchange of rasas. There was anger there, all these different indirect rasas. Shanta rase sarupa buddhe krishnaika nishtata shamoman nishtata buddhe iti srimukha gatha. When one is fully attached to Krishna's lotus feet, one attains the shamatha stage. The word shamatha is derived from the word shama. Therefore, shanta ras, the position of neutrality, means being fully attached to the lotus feet of Krishna. This is the verdict from the mouth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. That state is called self-realization. So this Shantaras is like the neutral stage. You're attached to Krishna, but there's not service unless you actually add a little bit of servitude to the Shantaras. It becomes spiritual only when you add a little bit of servitude to the Shantaras. The corresponding verse from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 3.1.47 follows. I guess we'll read this one because it's important. Shamaman nishtata buddher iti Sri Bhagavad Vachaha tan nishta durghata buddhere tam shantaratim vina. These are the words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead when one's intelligence is fully attached to my lotus feet, but one does not render practical service. One has to attain the stage called Shantarati or Shama. Without Shantarati, attachment to Krishna is very difficult to achieve. In other words, even if you're in a higher ras, you're actually going to have the symptoms, some of the symptoms of Shantarati. Not all the symptoms, because all the symptoms would mean you don't render service, but at least the positive symptoms. You're fully attached to Krishna's lotus feet, you're equipoised, you're tolerant in the material world. Then, based on that, you can build yourself up to the higher rasas. But you have to build up to the higher rasas. Okay. So on that happy note, today we read 186 to 212. Got it. We're going to be finishing this chapter pretty quickly, tomorrow or the next day. The teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Srila Rupa Goswami. So let's stop sharing, and we will allow you to ask questions. Let me just unmute you, or allow you to unmute yourselves. Okay, who has a question? Pregunta. Pregunta means question in Spanish. So write your question or unmute yourself or raise your hand, and I will be able to see what you do. So anyone have any questions? Going once? Amazing, no one has any questions about any of the topics. Okay, Mr. Govinda.
Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Prabhupada.
All glories Prabhupada. What's up?
Maharaj, Srila Rupa Goswami Pad, in relation to Srimati Radharani, is in Madhurya Rasa.
Yes.
And today you mentioned all these great devotees who are in Santa or Dasya, especially for Kumaras.
Yeah.
Now, how come Rupa Goswamis are praying and glorifying the Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Daite in that song, Sanaka Sanatana Bharnita Charite?
That is very, very interesting question. Because Shanaga and the four Kumars, Chatushan, actually glorify Radharani. And they do have a touch of Dasha. They're not pure Shanta. Sometimes when we talk about devotees who are in Shantaras, they actually may have a touch of servitude, and the four Kumars certainly serve because they preach Krishna consciousness. I mean, you can read about them. So they actually have an attitude of service towards Srimati Radharani and the glorification of Srimati Radharani. Because in Shantaras you can glorify. If someone's in pure Shantaras, they may glorify, but by that glorification they're serving. Because, isn't it? Service begins with what?
Yes.
Shravanam, Kirtanam, the 9 Nava Bhakti. The 9 processes of devotional service actually summarize what servitude is. Shravanam, the first service is what? Shravanadi. To hear, Kirtanam, then chant. So they are hearing and chanting, so they're serving Radharani. So in one sense, we could say they're not in pure Shantaras, but primarily in Shantaras. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's interesting. Madhurya Ras also needs Santaras. They want to hear that also. There must be some taste.
Yeah, there's some taste. I mean, they're appreciating Radharani, they're appreciating Krishna, and they're serving. They're serving, but they're not primarily in the servitude or Sakya or Vatsalya or Madhurya Ras. Someone in Shanta Ras can certainly, but there's some servitude there. If you're in pure Shanta Ras, you won't be glorifying. You'll just be saying, "Oh, how great God is," and just sit there staring at God. Like sometimes people go in front of the deities, and they look at the deities in the temple. Wow, Radha and Krishna is so beautiful. And then I'll say to them, "Would you mind washing Krishna's pots?" And they say, "No, I just want to."
You are funny, man. That's
it's happening like that. I mean, they just They come to the temple and they want to take prasadam. They love to see the deities, but they won't do a stitch of work.
Thank you for being merciful to them. At least you
Yes,
ignited.
I'm very merciful. I yell and scream at them.
Well, you
They have,
had an interest to uplift their consciousness, so elevate their consciousness. So hopefully they will reflect someday.
yeah. I tell them, get to work, you bum. That's what I tell. I uplift their consciousness. All right, here's another question. Hare Krishna. Are all the permutations of the five primary and secondary rasas possible? Not all the permutations. Some of the secondary rasas don't fit in with some of the primary rasas. Like in the spiritual world, let's say if you. All right, the example is. Let me give an example of rasa bas, a distasteful rasa bas. That I simply spit at mundane sex life because I love the relationship between Radha and Krishna. That is actually, whew, that is a conflicting thing. So you can't. It's not that you can always have all the permutations there, because some of them are tasty and some of them are not tasty, and that's all the science of rasabhas that's described in the Nectar of Devotion. It's a very interesting subject matter that Swarup Damodar Goswami was very expert in, and if there was any rasabhas, he wouldn't allow a particular work, poetry, or whatever to be shown or to be read to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. How are we engaged in practical service in Srila Prabhupada's mission even before we achieve Shanta Ras? Because we're serving a pure devotee. We may not have achieved realization of Shanta Ras, but at least we understand that we're servants. And we're serving a pure devotee. That's true. Because actually, without serving a pure devotee, we can't be engaged in service. It's a good question Mr. Gopal asked. Or Mr. Cohen, sorry. Gopal Cohen. That's Rasabhas. Rasabhas is his name, like Gopal Cohen. You're just wondering what religion he's a member of. Gopal Cohen. Phew. Anyway. Some people are really out to lunch. Anyway, so we can be practically engaged in service of Srila Prabhupada's mission by the mercy of Prabhupada because we're serving Prabhupada. We're not capable right now of serving Krishna directly. We're serving through the medium, the transparent medium of the spiritual master and Srila Prabhupada. Here's another one. Atmanandani. Hare Krishna Maharaj, with 5 main supplemental rasa, there will be many permeated commentaries over it. Yeah, sometimes there's a conflict in ras, and it's not acceptable. This is the same question I think your son asks. Aren't at least a couple of the 4 Kumaras are Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, or most Rupa and Goswami are not 4 Kumaras. Rupa and Sanatana Goswami are prominent manjaris. As far as the ontological position of the 4 Kumars, generally it's described they're Shanta Ras Bhaktas. How do we get the privilege of serving the pure devotee when we are fallen? How? By the pure devotee's mercy. What is that? Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhu vyevacha patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Kripa Sindhu is an ocean of mercy. An ocean of mercy. That means unlimited. Ocean means unlimited mercy. Dina hina yata chilo harinama udarilo. Whether you're fallen or elevated. I mean, look at what Prabhupada accepted in the beginning days of the Hare Krishna movement. It was just like you see some of the films, the videos or films or whatever they were, and it's just like, wow. Or you go to see the Rath Yatras that Prabhupada went to, or you see that Prabhupada went to this concert with the Grateful Dead, and I think it was called the Hungry Dog Stadium or something like that, whatever stadium it was. I forget the name. I mean, Prabhupada was very compassionate. Prabhupada is giving us the mercy. By Prabhupada's mercy, we're able to do this. By the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, which is given by the pure devotee, a lame man can walk, a dog can swim an ocean, or a blind man can see. That's how we get the privilege. Praneshra, you have a question. Wow, I haven't seen you for like 20 years.
Sorry, Gurudev. Guru, like my question is how to maintain the Trinata Vishnu Jainata Vishnu Amaya Namadhyana Caitanya Sadahari.
How to maintain it? Just serve your wife.
Krishna Maharaj.
Haribal, it's good to see you. I hope to go to India soon, Praneshra.
Oh, Jai, yes, Gurudev.
Probably in, I would say March or so, I'll come to Braj for maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yes.
You'll both be able to come then?
Yes.
You haven't been in India for 2 years now because of this COVID thing.
Yes, Maharaj.
Yeah, I definitely want to come and see you both. And bless you. Okay. So, on that happy note, I think we're going to end right now. Actually, end on a positive note. That's good. Okay, all glories to His Divine. See everybody tomorrow evening. All glories to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki.